Manyavar presents CNBC TV 18's Indian Business Icons, Leaders, Trailblazers, Radicals.
Hello and welcome to the India Business Icons, a show that celebrates the achievements of India's brightest corporate leaders. This week on the show, we bring you the story of a leader whose contrarian bets have always evoked polarizing responses. After a shaky start, the straight-talking Rajiv Bajaj has transformed Bajaj Auto from a maker of scooters to a motorcycle specialist with global aspirations. Also on the show, the CEO of India's largest IT services company, Chandr of Tata Consultancy Services, who's taken the battle away from the competition and created wealth and value for the house of Tatas. Our first icon today is Rajiv Bajaj. When a 20-something Bajaj, straight out of Warwick University, joined the family business in 1990, he couldn't have imagined how different the world would be from the one that the company was used to. Bajaj Auto was the undisputed leader in the Indian market, with the Chetak being the prize jewel. But soon, the Indian economy finally opened up, the license Raj ended, and Japanese manufacturers made inroads into India with motorcycles. The young mechanical engineer realized the Hamara Bajaj legacy was under threat. And so began an uphill battle to remain relevant. Working with a young team of engineers, Bajaj took on his father and the Japanese to woo back customers. 2 decades later, he successfully prevented the Hamara Bajaj brand from stagnating and has steered the company to become the #1 exporter of motorcycles from India. Here's the Rajiv Bajaj story.
My parents both came from Mumbai, and as Mumbai people, to move to what was essentially a village at that time, I think was a big discontinuity in their life. School was really close by, and I think it was pretty much a Bajaj Auto school. So you had kids, workers' children of the watchmen, children of the managers. I mean, all of us, it was one big circus. It was said that if you first moved to the colony, you could not sleep on any day of the week other than on Thursdays, because that's the day when the plant was shut, because on Thursdays we had no electricity. But soon, the thump of the press shop lulled you to bed on every day. The exposure I gained at university at Warwick was very different from the kind of education that one goes through here, as is well known. So suddenly I was on this campus, just fantastic, great teachers, great library, a great workshop, fantastic equipment, the opportunity to visit some very modern factories in the area. I went to the Honda factory, to Massey Ferguson, and others. So it was just an enormous learning opportunity.
His father, Rahul Bajaj, was keen for Rajiv to carry on the family tradition of getting an MBA from Harvard before joining the family business. But that was not to be. British auto industry veteran John Wallace, who was a consultant to Bajaj in the late 1980s, warned Bajaj Senior that if Rajiv left for that degree, he perhaps wouldn't have a business to come back to.
I wouldn't say I started at the bottom, to be honest. No, I think it's very fashionable to say that. And people talk about how the first day at work they swept the floor and stuff like that. I didn't do any of that. In fact, again, it was Dr. Wallace who made the point to my father that don't take too long moving him up the ranks. That in the process, you expose all his weaknesses to everyone. Having studied manufacturing at Warwick, I wished to modernize manufacturing at Bajaj. But I also knew that the company was completely ignorant of what is to be done. So what did I do on my first day? Essentially, I did this. My thesis as part of my master's degree was on manufacturing. So I took my thesis, condensed it a bit, got it cyclo-styled as one did in those days, and made about 200 copies of that, I think. And from each of the manufacturing areas, starting from assembly, painting, fabrication, the press shop, machining areas, etc., I pulled in 2 or 3 frontline supervisors who seemed young, bright and eager enough to me. Through that, I found, much to my amazement, the wealth of talent that India has in terms of its engineers. In the mid-90s, we invited a Professor Yamaguchi to come as a TPM consultant from Japan and to help us improve productivity. Now, I regard that meeting with him to be one of my greatest lessons in my life. He asked me straight off the bat like that. He said, "What is your job?" Now, at that time, I was Vice President Products. My primary responsibility was R&D. This was 96, so I had already moved on from manufacturing. So I said, "Yamaguchi-san, I am Vice President Products." He looked at me, he said, "That is your designation. What is your job?" So I said, "I look after the R&D." He said, "Oh, you are a designer." So I said, "No, I don't design." He said, "Then what is your job?" So I said, "My job is to make the motorcycle which people will buy." He said, "Oh, you are a dealer salesman, you are selling motorcycle in showroom." I said, "No, I have not sold a motorcycle in my life." He said, "You don't design anything, you don't sell anything, you don't make anything. Then what is your job?" I was quite stunned, I didn't know what to say. Then he just smiled a bit. He said, "Only talking is your job," he said to me. It left such a deep impact on me. He told me, "Yes, we call ourselves managers, but what are we doing except for reading some paper, giving some gyan, looking at some presentation, making a speech, cutting a ribbon? What is a manager's job actually?" So he told me that day, improvement is your job.
And Bajaj took this advice very seriously. From improving the efficiency at each of Bajaj Auto's plants to significantly improving shareholder returns. Today, every two-wheeler, three-wheeler and even the soon-to-be-launched quadricycle that comes off the Bajaj assembly line is built on its own proprietary technology. But as the gains were made, so were sacrifices, and the biggest of all was the scooter, which the company stopped making in early 2010. There isn't a day that goes by that Bajaj isn't asked a question on his decision to opt out of the scooter market.
तो मैंने तो आकर के अगले दिन नोटिस लगा दिया. And I was very clear that these people have built Bajaj. They will get their salary till they are 60. So it's not that I was sacking anyone in that sense or denying them their livelihood. Immediately that was big news. And so much so that even in the Maharashtra assembly, etc., as usual, the politicians were giving big speeches about it, etc. But I knew that I was fine, because as long as my people were paid and they were happy, what should be the problem? In fact, I remember the day we shut it down and 3,500 people left for the last time. It was like a barat, everybody was wearing turbans. There were sweets distributed, band baja was there. It was like a grand farewell and thank you very much, and we are still all part of the same family kind of feeling. So it was very positive inside, but from the outside people were trying to perceive it negatively. So my father was in Delhi, so he knew that I was not so likely to listen to him, so to speak, on this. So my father and Mr. Sharad Pawar have known each other for a long time. So he phoned me up and he said that, "You come here, I'm taking you to meet Sharad." So I said, "Okay." And my father spoke perhaps for 15-20 minutes. He loves to talk. And both Mr. Pawar and I listened to him very patiently as he expressed all his unhappiness and anguish and all that sort of thing. And I was amazed. After all that, Mr. Pawar just looked at me and he asked me only one question. He said, "Why did you do this without talking to your father?" And I said, "Because I was afraid he would never let me do it." And he just smiled, and that was the end of the meeting. So that's how we circumvented that storm.
Spelling out the company's strategy to focus only on motorcycles, Bajaj believes that the company can become a global leader in the segment only if it narrows its focus and does just one thing right. An engineer at heart, Bajaj says he has no interest in mastering the art of business management. Instead, it's the science of yoga and homeopathy that have helped him steer the business.
I thought to myself, what is my job? My job is, I have to ensure that my organization is well, it is healthy in an organizational sense. So I started studying homeopathy and yoga, starting with the book called The Organon of Medicine that was written by the founder of homeopathy, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, 200 years ago. And that has about almost 300 aphorisms or principles. I have tried to interpret that to the best of my ability in management terms. I have tried my best to disseminate that in the organization. So when you meet my colleagues, you would not be surprised to hear them talking some of the same gibberish that I do in terms of homeopathy and yoga. Where Dr. Hahnemann said, it is the life force which cures. For a dead man needs no more medicine. So that's what I believed, that whether it's in homeopathy or whether it's in the organization, strengthen yourself from within.
Well, that's Rajiv Bajaj for you. It's time now for us to take a break, but when we return, the story of a leader who started his career at TCS 30 years ago and has never looked back. CEO and MD of TCS, N. Chandr up next.
Manyavar presents CNBC TV 18's Indian Business Icons, Leaders, Trailblazers, Radicals.